Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and I'm here to talk about the report that came in from the new report that came in about the Ellen Greenberg death. And this came in from Lindsay Simon, who is now, I guess, the final word on whether Ellen Greenberg committed suicide or whether she was murdered, because those are the two major choices here. And I have labeled this video the egregious Lindsay Simon equivocal death analysis of Ellen Greenberg. And this is my opinion. And I will tell you before I start that I have been involved in a lot of cases where I've been asked to do an equivocal death analysis. And in case you don't know what that actually is, I'm going to read this to you. Equivocal death analysis is a comprehensive investigation into a death that is open to interpretation, meaning the manner of death could be homicide, suicide, or accident, or undetermined. So this is exactly what she did. She was to determine the manner of death, not the cause of death. We all know what the cause of death was. It's called a knife, okay? A knife that either her hand went like this or his hand went like this. And believe me, no stranger came into that place and did it. So we're talking about these two. Either suicide or homicide. Certainly can't be an accident, although he did say at one point, I think she fell on a knife 20 times, but you know. So it's either going to be suicide or homicide, or undetermined simply because you can't figure it out, which is acceptable, actually, when you're putting these things together. Undetermined means maybe more police investigation needs to be done because the cause of death is obvious. But because it could have been done in two different ways, suicide or homicide, there's going to be more to it than the physical, that actual cause of death. You're going to have to look at the blood spatter pattern. You're going to have to look at all the different circumstantial evidence, statement analysis. You're going to have to look at all of that. Oh, you'd think you should look at all of that if you're going to do an equivocal death analysis, Lindsay Simon, but apparently you did not. All right, so I just want to read this to you. Right, this came out from Fox 29. Ellen Greenberg, family attorney, calls medical examiner's report total rubbish. All right. Now, I want to get into the fact that, as I said, I've worked a lot of these cases where families say, my loved one didn't commit suicide. They were murdered. And most of the time, the police are correct. The medical examiner is correct. Most of the time, it is absolutely suicide. Families do not want to believe their loved ones killed themselves. They just can't, even if it's incredibly obvious. I had a case where a woman said, I know my son didn't kill himself. And I said, tell me what happened. She said, he came to my house, knocked on the door really loudly, and I opened it up and he burst through the door. And I said, what's wrong? And he wouldn't speak to me. And he went to his brother's bedroom and he pulled a shotgun off the wall. And then he left without telling me what was going on. A number of hours later, he was found dead in his trailer, door locked, shotgun between his knees, brains blown out. Mommy says, I think somebody murdered him. And I'm like, but your son went and got the weapon for the murderer? Okay, this is the kind of thing I've run into. Another case where a beautiful teenage girl hung herself, and her uncle found her because he didn't know what happened to her. So went down and was looking for it, found her hung in her closet with the tie from a robe, which is a very popular way of killing yourself. And the 911 call was just the saddest thing I've ever heard. The poor fellow hyperventilating everywhere. He's just like, he was so distraught. The family accused him of killing her because she would never do that to herself, in spite of the fact she left like a 5-page suicide note in loopy girl handwriting, explaining exactly why she didn't want to live any longer. Poor guy ended up in a mental institution because the family destroyed him because they couldn't accept that their daughter had killed herself. So I've been through this so many times, and usually I'm on the side of the police and the medical examiner because I recognize that for the most part, suicide is usually what is determined as suicide usually is, and is very, very rare. I have had a couple cases over 20, 30 years. I have had a couple cases. They do exist. This may be one of them. And so while he says the medical examiner's report is total rubbish, I actually can't disagree with it. And I'm going to call it egregious. And we have the same viewpoint on why it's egregious. Let me roll down here in this article. I'm going to get to a whole lot of stuff about this case. If you have some patience, you know I never have an outline. So I roll through this, and I want you to understand different things about this case and why this should have been labeled undetermined at this point in time. All right, so Joseph Pedraza, he's an attorney for the Ellen Greenberg family, refuted a controversial report from the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's office that concluded the 27-year-old teacher, her stabbing was a suicide. So this kind of amuses me. The backstory. Philadelphia's chief medical examiner, Lindsay Simon, released an, quote, independent and unbiased review. Oh my God, can you get more, no, there's nothing unbiased about this review. Not one thing. Now, my review is unbiased. I'll say that. Why is it unbiased? Because I'm not hired by anybody. I'm not here for the police. I'm not here for the political people of Philadelphia. I'm not here for the family. Mine is unbiased. Now, I could be wrong, but at least I'm unbiased. All right, so the review sought to answer whether Greenberg's manner of death should be changed from its current ruling of suicide to, quote, could not be determined or homicide. Greenberg's fiance claims he found her dead inside the apartment on January 26th, 2011. The first grade teacher had been stabbed 20 times, according to investigators. Her death was originally ruled a homicide following an autopsy and later changed to a suicide by the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office. We have some very interesting, varying viewpoints of what the actual evidence is and whether she could have done it herself or whether somebody else had to do it. Okay. And I'm again, I'll split this down the middle. Over here, actually, I'll go over here. Over here, we have the physical evidence of the actual wounds on the body, the damage on the body. And over here, we have more of the circumstantial stuff. Okay. Keep that in mind. All right. So Philadelphia Medical Examiner Marlon Osborne initially ruled her death as a homicide, noting the large number of stab wounds, including 10 to the back of her neck, which are kind of odd. After police publicly challenged the findings, Osborne switched the ruling to suicide without explanation. Okay, let me help you understand how things work in the real world. In reality, the cause of death is something that the medical examiner can come up with quite reasonably. Looks at the body, looks at the damage to the body, and says, the person was shot, the person was stabbed, the person was suffocated, whatever. But the manner of death is always a little bit more difficult because the medical examiner is only looking at who's on a slab, essentially, who's on the table. It is the police that bring in all the information about the circumstantial evidence around it and the crime scene evidence. So the blood spatter pattern, what happened at the crime scene, and then all the people involved, that all comes from the police side of it. So the medical examiner oftentimes will go along with whatever the police tell them, as long as they come up with the cause of death, and then the police will say, this is why it's whatever it is. And they will sign off on that. All right. So for the most part, again, it's usually not that difficult. Homicides are usually homicides. Suicides are usually suicides. Accidents are usually accidents. Until you get to those weird ones. And the weird ones are what cause all the trouble. All right. So anyway, they've been battling all the years. And this is what the attorney Joseph Pedraza says. He says, this report has simply taken the view of a one-sided approach where preordained that it should be a suicide, and then, of course, just focuses on the facts that the medical examiner contends support suicide and ignores the other facts that are staring the medical examiner right in the face. And I am not overly fond of defense attorneys, but he's totally correct. she, Lindsay Simon might as well be Sam's attorney, because she has done everything she can to ignore all the evidence that might reflect on him as possibly being involved in the death of his fiancée. This is not an unbiased equivocal death analysis. This is, I don't know what this is. I don't know if she wants to keep her job. I don't know if it's a political thing. I don't know what's going on. And I'm not going to get into all of that. What I do want to get into is why I think her report is rubbish, along with the defense attorney. So now let's get into it. And by the way, in case you're new to the channel, I do like to survive. Please do subscribe to the channel, check out all my stuff, and check my playlists, all of that, whatever it is. Anyway, I'm a bad saleswoman. Anyway, I also want to point out two things before I keep going. This is what 3 years ago I did this. It's called the Ellen Greenberg mystery. It was almost 3 hours, which is kind of excessive, but that's what I did on this particular analysis of what happened. And I did it 3 years ago. And when I saw this come out, that Lindsay Simon had determined that it was a suicide, I will admit, I'm not always right. I'm a criminal profiler who does analyses of cases. And I cannot say that I'm a god of profiling, a god of equivocal death analysis, and that I'm always going to be, don't go anywhere else. Just come to me because I'm always right. No, I can't say that. I analyze the evidence. I give an opinion of that. I give an analysis, but the analysis is obviously going to be my opinion. Quite frankly, Lindsay Simon is also giving an opinion. Everybody's giving an opinion. Now, an opinion, when you're talking about something critical like this, should be based on evidence. So all of my profiles, equivocal death analyses, I base it on evidence, and I try to very clearly state, if I say this, this is the evidence that supports what I'm saying, so that you can at least determine whether it makes sense or not. But, could I ever be wrong? Sure. So I went back. So after she did this conclusion, and I'm like, oh man, have I missed something here? I went back and watched my video, which is, I don't usually like to watch my own videos. It's just, it's one of those things. And I watched the whole thing for 3 hours to see, what was I talking about? What was I saying? How was I analyzing the evidence? I want to recommend, yes, when you're finished with this, if you want to understand this more thoroughly, please do go and watch this video I did. And I'll link it below, because I go into all the different details and explain things, which I'm not going to do here because I don't want to redo the entire video. So I think that's very important for you to see. Also, because there's a lot of statement analysis, which is important in this case, which, by the way, Lindsay Simon completely ignored. The text messages he sent and the 911 call, she doesn't even reference in her totally thorough and unbiased equivocal death analysis. Not even there. I will go through that later in this show, but just to want to let you know about Peter Hyatt does a description. I'll put his link below too. He goes through the 911 call, and Peter Hyatt, unfortunately, is no longer with us. One of the finest statement analysis people I've ever known. Been in contact with him for years. We shared a lot of thoughts about different cases. And I'm always very, very thankful that I do a kind of different statement analysis than does Peter Hyatt. I do what I call red flag statement analysis. I look for the most obvious things. He goes very in depth and into those kind of things. And so I've always appreciated that how specific he was about things, and so much to learn. I'm going to go through some of his in this video because I think it deserves attention. And so I want you to hear it. Yeah, I wish he was still around. I really do. I do. In case you're looking for somebody else who does some good statement analysis, do check out Deception Detective. I've seen him doing some pretty good stuff. And I'm pretty critical about a lot of stuff that's on the internet because I want you to focus in on people who do things professionally and explain things and aren't just YouTubers making money. Okay. So I'm going to go through some of Peter Hyatt's stuff, but again, the link will be below. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful professional. Absolutely fantastic. All right. So now I want to get into a number of things about I'm going to go to, let me move over here. All right. I want to read a little bit more of this article, and I'm going to kind of go back and forth because sometimes it's just hard to get everything in at one moment. So have patience. Among the findings shared in the new report, the medical examiner found more stab wounds and bruises than originally thought. Pedraza suggests that these findings should motivate investigators to take another look at the case. Absolutely. She had a crap load of bruises on her body, some from farther back in time, some more recent. These things tell me two things. One is, why does she have so many bruises on her body over time? And two, what about the new ones? To me, the new ones allow a theory, which I have, that she was restrained. She has no defense wounds. This is true, which you often see in somebody who's stabbing somebody. You go, you try to protect yourself, but you cannot protect yourself if you're. Let me show you the picture of the where she was at. No, it's gone missing on me. I just love it when I can't find things. Hold on a second. Hold on one second, folks. All right. Oh, that's what I want. Is that what I want? Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah. Okay. I lose things all the time. I never edit my videos, so you have to. So anyway, this is the corner. She's in the corner of this kitchen, up against this counter here, and you will see that the holder of the knife, those big wood blocks, has not been knocked over. So whoever pulled the knife out pulled the block over as well. She's in that corner. Now, if somebody is restraining you, grabbing a knife and putting your arm around and restraining you, you're not going to have defense wounds because your arms are going to be by your side. This is never examined by Lindsay Simon. Why not? Because this is one thing she doesn't do. There's a thing called crime reconstruction and crime reenactment. It's very, very important. I have found so many things out when I've done these kind of reenactments and reconstructions. One time I went to it was one of these classes where you go and in 3 hours you learn how to protect yourself from some dude on the street. So if he grabs you, you're supposed to do A, B, and C, right? So I went home, asked my husband, I said, okay, grab me. He grabbed me. I'm like, crap. I couldn't do anything. He's a strong man. I was like, you couldn't do anything. So if he grabbed her and pinned her arms, there's going to be no defense wounds because it's impossible to move your arms if they're pinned. And so if he's behind her and pinned her arms, he can stab up her head until she's that way. And then he can step off and let her fall to the ground and finish her off. That crime reconstruction, crime reenactment, never done. Okay, so he says here basically that, yes, there were bruises on her body. Oh, do you want to know what Lindsay Simon said the bruises were from? This is how she dismisses evidence that she doesn't want to address. She said it's because she's a first grade teacher. I'm like, I know kids are bad these days, and they'll kick the crap out of you and stuff, you know what I mean? But really, she said all these bruises all over her body because she's in a first grade classroom and they're just beating the living devil out of her, you know what I mean? Okay. as far as I know, she wasn't in the kind of classroom that had the highly misbehaving children. So I'm going to say that probably makes zero sense. But Lindsay Simon just dismisses all the bruising on her body by saying, could have been those children. That is not how you analyze a case. Could it be the children? Sure. Then I would go to the school. I find the other first grade teacher and see if they're all beat up. I want to see if they're all beat up. I want to see if her friends have said the children are beating her up. The other teachers are saying that she's being beat up. But if you do not want to find out the truth, you don't investigate that, because you want to dismiss the fact that maybe, I'm not saying he could have been abusive. And you'll hear this. He was her Prince Charming. She never told the psychiatrist she was going to therapy. She went 3 times. And never said he was a bad guy. Never said he was, she's a nice guy. Nobody had anything bad to say about him. And if you go to anybody who's been emotionally and sometimes physically abused by their partner, they will tell you that they didn't say anything to anybody. And their families were shocked. Their friends were shocked because, oh my God, I didn't have a clue. Why? Because you kept that under wraps. She was getting married to this guy. And why was she keeping it under wraps if it was true? Maybe because she just didn't want to admit it. Maybe not to herself, maybe not to other people. Who knows? And maybe that's why as the wedding date approached, she was getting more and more stressed out, although the claim it totally had to do with her teaching profession. And just because she didn't tell her therapist something that, I have a problem with him, doesn't mean she wouldn't have gotten there if she'd gotten to go to a few more therapy sessions. So again, Lindsay Simon dismisses anything that could be negative about him. So anyway, Pedraza disputes the claim that nearly a dozen bruises found on Ellen's body in various stages of healing were evidence of self-harm, instead saying that it raises the prospects that she was physically abused before January 26th. Absolutely. All right. Now, let's get to some other things. I want to talk about whether she could have stabbed herself. Okay? And the answer to that is yes. Okay, so hold on a second. I'm getting toasty here. Okay, so could she have stabbed herself? This is the knife she used. All right. I did a whole thing where I used a cheaper kitchen knife. I had a longer one, but I didn't want to use my good Japanese knives. But I marked off the different levels of how deep the knife would have stabbed. There over here you'll see there were a lot of smaller stabs, and then there were the big 4. The first one that was huge was to her head and her spine, and then there was the abdomen stab, and then you can see the heart stab right there. Now, some people thought she could not have done this herself. I've seen a lot of people say that. They're like, oh, she couldn't, it's too awkward. She couldn't have done that. I'm like, no, you can do that because all you do is turn your head. And it'll look the same if the head is in a different position. Yes, she could have stabbed herself in the head, in the neck. So I will concede, because I have to, because I'm looking at this as the injuries to her body. She could have done herself. I don't have any issue with saying that it's possible. However, I also find it is very possible that somebody else could have done those injuries by grabbing her, and as she's trying to get away, he's stabbing at her, and some of the things are minor, and then he hits her in the head, drops to the ground, stabs her a few times, hits her in the chest. Yeah, he can do it too. What is very unique, and this is one of the things that drives me crazy. Supposedly she'd gone on the internet and looked up some things about suicide. And I don't have the proof of that. I would like to see exact searches. There's a lot of things that are just left out and told to us. And it may be true, but I don't see the evidence, I'm like a little suspicious. But anyway, she was depressed. She was very upset about her teaching profession. Hey, been there. I was a professor at college. Didn't go well. I developed an entire program in criminal profiling for college. I was required to grade inflate and allow plagiarism. And when I wouldn't, they found a way not to rehire me, even though I wrote the whole program. And then they destroyed my program. So it was very depressing. I did not kill myself. I'm not saying she wasn't upset about things, but she was discussing it with people. She had options. She had options. Was she feeling bad about herself? Yes, she had some issues. She went to the therapist, trying to get some help going. I'm really depressed, all those kind of stuff. Just because you're depressed doesn't mean you're going to kill yourself. And just because you actually think maybe my life is I shouldn't be here. Did she check out possibilities of killing herself? Maybe. But supposedly she checked out painless ways to kill yourself. I'm going to say this is not painless. Okay? This is not painless. If you're checking out painless ways to kill yourself, let me show you a good way to do that. Hold on, I got to find it. Oh, okay, sorry. There it is. Yeah. Bottles of alprazolam, clonazepam, and zolpidem prescribed for the decedent were recovered from a bedside table. She had a crap load of drugs, basically Xanax and what's the other one? There's the different names for things. I'm not a medical person, and I don't know my all the drug stuff. She had enough there, because I did check it out, that she had taken those things, she probably would have died from an overdose. If you want painless, you got two choices. Take the drugs, and this is very common for females, because all you do is just take them and lay down and snuggle in your bed. I'm not saying sometimes people aren't throwing up and stuff. This doesn't always go as well as you think, but a lot of times you do sort of pass out, and then your breathing slows down. You just don't wake up. I mean, that's why so many people have done overdose by drugs. Another way, of course, is the hanging and the hanging by it, which is very simple, which is just in doing that. All you have to do is put something around your neck and then bend your knees, and then when you pass out, you can't stand up again. Also fairly painless. I'm not saying you should do this. Go get help if you think you should do this. You shouldn't. But in order to help you understand things, if she wanted painless, she had two good ways to do it. But no, instead, she could have stabbed herself to death. Now, supposedly when he left, she was grading papers. She had to get in. She was talking to a friend. And the moment he leaves, she supposedly jumps up, locks him out of the house, although they're not having an argument, locks him out, which she's never done before. Because he's only going down to the gym, which he points out over and over again. I was only going down to the gym in the condo. She wasn't, it was in the middle of the day. She wasn't worried about somebody breaking in and killing her. So why did she supposedly put the lock on, the inside lock? Why did she do that? Well, if she was really angry with him, she might do that, sure. If she wanted to kill herself and have somebody not find her in time, she would do that. But why wouldn't she just take the overdose of drugs or use the old rope tie thing? Why would she then go in the kitchen? She's not on meth. She's not on bath salts. It's not the easiest thing to take a knife and stab the crap out of yourself and stab you through yourself through what the heck? I mean, that is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And most of the time, it's a male who will do that, and somebody who's on meth or bath salts, because they lose their normal contact with reality, and these things don't bother them as much. She was not under the influence of any of those things. So right now, here I am. There's no way in God's earth I'm depressed. I could get up and do that to myself. Or the other thing that's so important, if she did do that to herself, there's two other things that don't ever happen. One is stabbing yourself through the neck is so bizarre, because that doesn't ensure death. It can ensure you can be paralyzed for the rest of your freaking life when you cut into your spinal cord. That's not really good. Most of the time, people will slash their wrists. Sometimes people slash the side of the throat, so they bleed out. And sometimes they will take the knife and do a straight through plunge. That's true, right into the heart, because that's the end of it. They rarely do it through clothing, and she had a zip up thing. So she's grading some papers, boyfriend, fiance, goes out of the place. She jumps up, locks up the door, runs into the kitchen, and starts stabbing the crap out of herself. Circumstantially and historically, this is not something that happens, okay? This is not a usual thing. It's extremely, extremely rare. So Ms. Lindsay Simon, Dr. Simon, that you would think this is a normal way to kill yourself is not true. It's so abnormal, one would have to look a little further. She was given medications from a doctor she could have used. She could use a simple method with a rope tie. And yet she decides to violently torture herself on the way out, maybe just paralyzing herself for life. Because when she does this, she has no assurance that she can do this. So she just might be forever paralyzed. I'm sorry. I find that an extremely odd way for somebody who's not on bath salts and meth to do themselves in. Makes very little sense. So, but here's what Lindsay Simon does. She says she could have done it. Well, she could have. Just like you could shoot yourself in the head doesn't mean you did. Just because you could jump off a balcony doesn't mean you did. You could have, but did somebody push you? And the point about doing an equivocal death analysis, Ms. Dr. Simon, is that you actually examine the other issues besides the fact that they could have done it. Now, before you think I'm making up this crap about could have done it, I want to read you. Okay, her final words. Okay, sorry. Let me find it. Okay, here we go. This is the final death analysis. Okay, I'm gonna have to go. I can't read. It's too dang small. Let me read it from her own words, and then I'm going to get into the circumstantial evidence. By the way, before I do that, she did check out supposedly. This says here the medical examiner's office was asked to conduct an independent and unbiased review of all the available materials. Blah blah blah. Sure, alrighty, and come to and determine whether the manner of death should be changed from the current ruling of suicide to could not be determined or homicide. The review was conducted independently by the undersigned, with all opinions being those of the undersigned without influence. All right, no influence. All right, but let's look what she looked at. Okay, so you looked at all these materials, supposedly. Transcripts, paper records from the police department, which she seemed to ignore a whole bunch of them, like she never paid any attention to the text messages or the 911 call, or anything else like that. And then she got all these consultative reports. Let's look at the consultative reports. All right. This is Dr. Jonathan Arden. Now, he is this is the one guy who goes along with the program. His final conclusion, if you look at the bottom from the report, is the manner of death is suicide. Some of the statements he makes in there. There was no injury to the spinal cord that would have prevented Ellen from inflicting injuries herself. That's questionable. Let's see. She had no defensive wounds on her body. That's true, but that doesn't mean those bruises are not defensive wounds, but they mean that she's being held in a situation where she can't fight back. She could have reached all the areas. She could have. All right. While stab wounds to the posterior head and neck are atypical of suicides, they're not physically inconsistent. Well, but they're atypical. But without basically saying she could have done it, and therefore it's a suicide. But that's nonsense. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is from Dr. Wayne Ross. He says, if you look at the bottom, final conclusion is the scene findings were indicative of homicide. And he points out right above that, you can see it says bruises on the body in varying stages of healing are consistent with repeated beating. All right, he's got some stuff on strangulation. I don't know if it's true or not. By the way, he sees his finger marks and bruises. I don't know that I believe that. I just can't see the report. I don't know if he's exaggerated that or if it's true. I don't, but it makes it suspicious. All right. This is also Dr. Wayne Ross. He says, manner of death is homicide. All right. Then we go to Cyril Wecht. Cyril Wecht says, suicides by stabbing rarely have multiple stab wounds. Exactly. 20 stab wounds is so atypical, it's ridiculous. Yeah. Most of the time, it's something that just works quickly because you don't want to suffer. Stab wounds to the posterior neck and head are unlikely to be from suicide. I haven't seen any cases where that's true. That somebody committed suicide by stabbing themselves on the back of the head. Suicides may have cuts or tentative stabbings to see if it hurts. That's true. These smaller marks that they think are hesitation things, like, okay, is it going to hurt? Is it going to hurt? Okay, I'm going to do it. I get that. They can be hesitation marks. I don't have an objection to that. And I showed you a picture earlier. Where did I show it to you? Okay, here. You'll see some smaller marks. They could be hesitation marks, but they could be they could also just be that she's moving her head and the person's going, what do you, even they could be mocking her. You're causing me trouble, you're causing me trouble. It could be a number of things. Could be hesitation marks. It could be sort of mocking, torturing the little victim before you stab them. It could be she's moving her head and therefore it just kind of nicked. I don't know. It could be hesitation marks on the point of the actual person who's, if there was a homicide, it could be hesitation marks because this is a person they have supposedly loved, and now they're like, I'm angry. Could be. And the final one on the front, it's a couple of them. It's okay, I'm going to do you in. Boom, boom. So you can make your argument one way. You can make your argument another. Okay, so let's go back. Cyril Wecht. Suicides usually have only one significant wound, likely to the chest. Correct. A suicide victim will frequently leave a note. There was none. I've seen so many not leave any. No prior indication of suicidal ideation to family, friends, coworkers, or psychiatrists. That is true, but there was supposedly these internet searches. Suicide victims rarely stab themselves through their clothing. Also true. All right. Final conclusions. The manner of death of Ellen Greenberg is strongly suspicious of homicide. All right. Let's look at this is a consultative report from Henry Lee and Ms. Elaine Pagliaro. Look at the bottom. Final conclusion from the report. The number and type of wounds and bloodstain patterns observed are consistent with a homicide scene. The bloodstain pattern is important. I go into that in my video. That the bloodstains on her, they're consistent with her being upright when she received some of her injuries. Blood flowing in different directions on her face means she could have been moved after receiving the bleeding injuries, and so on and so forth. So check that out. And this is from Michael Woodhouse. This is a biomechanical analysis. All right, he says at the bottom, final conclusion from the report, Ms. Greenberg's manner of death is not biomechanically consistent with suicide. Yeah, okay. Go read the report. I'm going to link that below too. This is Detective Scott Eelman. He says the bloodstains on her face are inconsistent with the position her body was found in. Her clothes are consistent with her being seated with the head tipped forward when the stains were made. Blood staining on the floor was minimal compared to the blood staining on her clothes. I have some issues about the blood. If you go back to my video, I talk a lot about the blood dropping straight down, like somebody's just standing there with a knife and having it going drip, 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 and the blood spatter pattern is straight down. I don't think personally she would have made that. And then that's at the bottom. My final conclusion from the report, Ellen was not in a position in which she was found when the injuries occurred. All right, one more, let's see. This is the final analysis by Lindsay. Okay, let me read you the final analysis. And then I'm going to get into the circumstantial stuff of his text messages and his 911 call, which is where Lindsay Simon should have been willing to even look at, but it's not included anywhere in her report because she was his defense attorney, and that's abominable and egregious because she's supposed to be independent. All right, final analysis of Ellen's death. To summarize the entirety of this report, she was a young woman who's suffering from anxiety. That's true. The anxiety appeared mostly due to her work as a teacher, although you have no clue whether some of the anxiety came from him. So what just because you don't know doesn't mean it's true. She was specifically worried that the grade she needed to submit on the day of her death would indicate she had previously given inflated grades to students. Okay, so she might have been inflating grades, and pretty much that's what's done in the schools these days anyway. So I don't think that would be something that would cause her to stab herself to death 20 times. She was under the care of a psychiatrist for this anxiety. With her recent change in medications, while her recent change in medications had helped with the insomnia associated with her anxiety, she did not survive long enough to address the anxiety herself. But why didn't she take the medications her therapist gave her to kill herself? Thus, she had an increase in energy to act on her anxious thoughts. Oh, okay. So she was anxious. She didn't need meth. She didn't need bath salt. She just needed some anxiety to stab herself that many times with a knife. Well, I've been anxious before, but that has never propelled me to do that. Ellen was found dead in her apartment with 23 stab wounds, 23, and then they found some more, and incised wounds. These wounds were limited to a posterior head, neck, right neck, and central front torso. While the distribution of injuries is admittedly unusual, oh, you admit it's unusual? Like it almost never happens that way? The fact remains that she would be capable of inflicting these injuries herself. Again, yes, but it doesn't mean she did. And if it's that unusual, that gives you all the more reason to check it out. Many of these stab wounds and incised wounds would best be characterized as hesitation wounds. Would best be in your language, because you're trying to say she committed suicide. So you're determining that these are hesitation wounds, in spite of the fact they may not be. No defensive injuries were identified on her body. True, but there were bruising all over her body, which could mean that she was abused in the past, but also because she might have been restrained. There was no evidence to indicate she was incapacitated or incapable of defending herself. It's true she didn't have any drugs in her system that would make her, but if a guy puts his arms around you like this, you can't move. I don't know. I want to take you, Ms. Lindsay Simon, to one of these little classes and have some big dude put his arm around you. You just see what you can do. That's why I'm against a lot of these 3-hour, how to save your butt when you're running, you're jogging down a path, and some 250-pound killer jumps out in front of you, and you're like, with you can't even punch. You punch like a girl, you know what I mean? Break your wrist. You try to kick in your high heels, and within seconds, the guy's got you down on the ground. He's strangling you to death. Yeah, okay. Don't take those classes. They're stupid. If you really want to learn something, learn martial arts, spend a lot of time, and understand, still don't go jogging on those paths, because even if you take martial arts classes, most women are flyweights. Flyweights don't get in a boxing ring or an MMA ring with heavyweights, because you lose. That's why they have weight classes. You lose because you can't fight them. So anyway, there's no evidence she was incapable of defending herself. Yes, there is. The fiance's DNA was not detected on the knife. Well, first of all, he lived in the apartment with her. It's their apartment. I'm sure he used those damn knives, so I don't know why his DNA couldn't have been on the knife. And maybe it wasn't because he wiped the knife off and then stuck it in her hand. His self-reported timeline of events is corroborated by phone logs, text messages, surveillance videos, key card swipes, and police interviews. Yeah, well, that's because his reports are, if he killed her and left the apartment, then he went to the gym, let some time pass, then he went back and tried to get in the apartment, couldn't get in, spent a whole hour not getting in the apartment. Sure, that's all matches things, but his behaviors and his statements do not match a person who is trying to save his loved one from possible death. All right, I'll get to that. No evidence was provided to indicate Ellen was in an abusive relationship with her fiance. That's because you're ignoring the actual text messages that he sent when he couldn't get in the apartment, which were really creepy, which were controlling and creepy. There was no evidence of a third party being involved. That's true. And nor was anyone else's DNA detected. Of course not. No one else came in that apartment. We all know she either killed herself or he killed her. There's only two choices. No findings of a struggle are found at the scene. Well, not if he put his arm around her and held her. I mean, if you're like a bouncer at a club, you've got methodologies to restrain people. You restrain them in a way that doesn't get you hurt. So there's a lot of times not findings of a struggle. If the person can't freaking move when you're stabbing them in the neck, then no value was reported missing. Of course not. With all this information considered, it is the opinion of the undersigned that the manner of Ellen Greenberg's death is best classified as suicide. No, it was not. It's best classified as undetermined. All opinions stated in the report are expressed with a reasonable degree of medical certainty. But medical certainty, the only medical certainty you have is that she was stabbed to death. And you decided that because the smaller marks on her body were hesitation wounds, that eliminated everything else, including all of the circumstantial evidence, which you decided not to bother with, because you're not really doing an equivocal death analysis. You're really just doing, I don't know, a defense for the fiance. All right. That's what she says. All right. Now, let's get to the statement analysis I want to do of him. Well, I do want to address this issue because this is one of the reasons the case became so difficult. The evidence that the door was locked, that he left and she locked the door behind him, and that in order to get into the place, he had to bust the door open, causing that damage to the door and the lock. You can see the screws are pulled out, and some of the part of the door is pulled away, proving that he did try to open the door when the lock was on. Okay. That is probably the most difficult thing to deal with in this case. However, again, one thing Dr. Lindsay Simon does not bother to do is look at the possibilities that she did not lock that door. So what are the possibilities? One is the actual person, the woman who runs the place, said that there's a problem with some of these locks, that if you slam the door hard enough, sometimes the actual, it's called, I forgot what it's called now. It's like you have in a hotel. It's one of these hotel type locks. This thing, swing bar. The swing bar will swing and close it. She said she's been locked out of her apartment because this damn thing did it on its own when she slammed the door. It went, well, if that's true, you've just now stated, you have a witness who states she may not have closed that herself. He could have slammed the door and it just went like that. He said she never locked the place up when he went down to the gym. So either he was surprised when he came back and found it locked, but he never once considered that she actually locked him out, except for, we'll see in a minute. That's one possibility. The other possibility is he could have, after doing something to her, he could have said, I need some excuse because they're going to look at me. So I'm going to go down to the gym, but I want to make it look like something happened when I wasn't here. So what if I lock this thing and, well, obviously I have to get out the door, so I can't lock it and then try to get out the door. But what I can do is lock it, and I can pull on the door until I damage this enough that when I come back in, I can pretend I'm breaking the door open. So that's another possibility. There are also ways to use like a little tool to just pull it shut. But that's, I've went to Grok and a few other places, and you can do it. How easy it is to do, I don't know. But that's where crime scene reenactment comes in. I would like them to redo that with all the different locks and the different locks in the building. Pull the door, pull the door, pull the door. See if it locks on its own. See if you can bust it a little bit like this and then make it look like you broke in later. Check these things out. But if you're not going to do that, police department of Philadelphia, which apparently didn't bother to do a whole lot of things, one of the most also egregiously bad police investigations I've ever seen. And I'm usually very much on the side of the police because I work with police and I appreciate all the work they do and appreciate what the detectives do to try to solve cases. But once in a while, whatever reasons, their politics can play a part. I have seen pressure coming down from certain people, and I'm not going to get into this here, but yes, there's a lot of pressure on certain people in the police department to wrap things up sometimes. So anyway, this needs to be checked out. Now, he leaves the apartment and he's in gym clothes, goes down to the gym. Now, I want to point out some of these things as we go along. All right, so here he is, by the way, walking along. So he kind of looks relaxed and like he couldn't have done anything. So that's kind of one of those things that makes you think he's innocent. Now, I'm going to go through, I'm going to try to find what okay, we've been through there. I'm trying to find my started here. Okay, all right, let's go to, yeah, here we go. All right. So after he gets out of it goes away. Oh, I want to, where's my, hold on a second. I want to do the time frame for you because here's the thing. Let me find it. It is in the report. That's one thing she put in the report, but I want to bring up the time frame. I'm not gonna find it. Okay. All right, here we go. 1:32 p.m. Ellen enters the parking garage. 1:51, final text message between Ellen and a friend. 1:53, fiance enters the parking garage. Okay. 2:16. So now they're both in the apartment. 2:16, Ellen sends a final text message. 2:17, The friend sends one. 2:18. Now Ellen sends one. Okay, it keeps going on for a while. So they have some text messages going back to 2:27. And so 2:27, everything, she's still alive. And in this, just what she's talking to the friend about is, I got to get this crap done. I got to do this grading of all this stuff. Okay. Then at 2:33, a call is made from Ellen's cell phone to a number not saved in contacts. The internet search links the number to an area restaurant, an upcoming reservation at the same restaurant mentioned in a text between the two of them. Now, this is where you might want to say, what is it about the reservation? Is she canceling it or is she keeping it? If she's keeping it, she's not planning to kill herself. All right. Then they keep saying these final text messages, and then they say there's more. 3:39, text message sent by a friend. 3:40, text message sent by Ellen. These are not final text messages until the final one. At 3:41, another text message. 3:40, last text message was sent by Ellen. 3:41. All right. At 4:45, the fiance reported to police leaving the apartment at this time to go to the gym. This is a police interview, which, by the way, should have been an interrogation, but it was just an interview, and they got along very well. So, in other words, they were there together from 3:40 to 4:40, essentially. An hour. They were there together an hour. During that hour, he didn't notice anything supposedly odd. She's doing her work, whatever. And that's what he says. Of course, during that hour is exactly when the murder might have gone down, especially toward the end of the hour. All right, but we don't know that, if it's a murder, by the way. I just said the murder went down, if it was a murder. All right, so 4:45 goes to the gym. 4:46, last activity on her work laptop. Wait a minute, 4:46, the documentary, which she includes, because, you always want to include documentaries in your professional equivocal death analysis, that she was working on her laptop and wasn't verified. Get out of here. All right, 4:51, he enters the gym. 5:30, he leaves the gym, walking toward the concierge desk. I don't know why he's walking toward the concierge desk, but he is. Okay, 5:31, they have him getting on a lobby elevator while reading mail. Oh, he goes to the main part, picks up mail, and then he's going upstairs. This all sounds very normal, right, at this point. At 5:30 to 5:45, approximately, neighbor A from the 6th floor reports seeing him trying to enter his apartment. They overhear him continuing to attempt to gain access intermittently for approximately 1 hour after this first encounter. Okay, here's where the problem begins. He goes to the apartment at approximately 5:30. About 5:30, he's at the apartment. He's knocking on the door. He tries to get in, and supposedly it won't open. Knocking on the door, yelling through the door, and he's getting no answer. He does this for an entire freaking hour. He sends text messages. He makes phone calls. He goes down to the concierge desk, and they make phone calls. This makes zero sense. Why would the concierge desk phone go through any more than his cell phone? I mean, if you're both making the phone call to the same number, what's the point? So anyway, he's gone down there and, I can't get in. All right. Then it says, okay, let me read some of the other thing it says. Let me see if I can find it now. All right. Okay, these are the voice messages. He made multiple phone calls to Ellen during the period, in addition to texts, but the specific transcripts have not been released. Okay, I have some of them, and I'll get into them. All right, let's go to the next part. Ellen's fiance explains that he didn't force entry into the apartment sooner on the day of the incident because he thought perhaps Ellen was in the shower, working with headphones on, or napping. Ellen would reportedly only latch the apartment door shut when she went to sleep or when the fiance traveled. Reportedly, Ellen did not normally latch the door shut when her fiance went to the gym. The fiance reported speaking to a neighbor in the hallway while he was trying to enter the apartment. The neighbor reportedly suggested that the fiance go to the front desk to get a spare key, but he reportedly responded that he had the keys, but the door is latched from the inside. So you go downstairs, you come back. I understand that she could be in the shower. That's true. I understand she could be in her headphones. I've been under headsets, and I have sounds. I have one that sounds everything. I've had people knock at my door and I don't hear a damn thing. And you know what they do? They come into the house to find out what's wrong with me. So it's not unlocked so they can get in. But they're concerned if they can't get in. And I have to tell them, I'm under the headset, what was the other one? The shower headphones are napping. She's napping so heavily. She doesn't hear them beating the crap out of the doors. This is not a big place. Now, mind you, this is a guy who claims he doesn't seem to know that his fiancée is depressed and getting medication from a doctor, that she has issues. If I know somebody has some issues and is taking medications and I can't get in, I'm going to be concerned that they're overdosing in there. And the longer I take, the more chance of they are overdosed. And I can't get in. All right. So there's another initial encounter where this is very strange. This one time says, Ellen's fiance forcibly pushed against the door to show neighbor A the problem. While this neighbor couldn't see the latch engaged at this point, they reportedly noticed that the latch reverberating and making noise. This, first of all, there's two different reports. One, they never saw anything, that he just said the guy couldn't get in. And now you could see that there was supposedly a latch there, but he couldn't see the latch. So again, this is very shaky evidence that anybody else knew that latch was actually on the door at the time. But then it gets weirder. All right, let's see. He tried pounding on the door, didn't get a response. The maintenance supervisor reported that the fiance indicated he was getting worried about Helen. Getting worried? How long did it took you, an hour to get worried? And he was getting worried about Ellen and asked permission to kick the door down. I think my girl, my fiance might be dying in there from a drug overdose. Is it okay if I kick the door in? Dude, you're going to pay for the door. That's all. You pay for the damage. You're a rich dude. Then it says here, the maintenance supervisor reportedly replied that kicking wasn't necessary and that the fiance could probably shoulder the door open. The maintenance supervisor reportedly told Ellen's fiance not to worry about the latch, implying consent to shoulder the door open. So, in other words, the door opens partially, and all you have to do is like hit it with your shoulder, and it opens up. Oh my God! You could save your fiance's life, or you might have to pay for this. Oh my God! What a decision to make. I might have to pay $100 to fix the door damage. Or I can let my fiance die because I'm that worried about it. So get out of here. You ask permission to break into your own apartment when you think something's wrong in the apartment. You have to ask permission. Okay. This is so suspicious that Dr. Lindsay Simon, you didn't even bother to look at the behavior that he was doing there for an entire hour. We're not talking 10 minutes, 50 minutes. We're talking an entire hour. That you didn't do anything to save your fiance's life. Should she have done something like an OD? You just didn't do anything. But you're so worried. But, you want to ask permission to cause a little damage to the door that you could afford to fix. Okay, let's look at his text messages that he's giving her. Hello, open the door. What are you doing? I'm getting pissed. Hello, you better have an excuse. What the? You have no idea. Okay, I'm creeped out by a bunch of things. If she wasn't opening the door and he was getting angry, you would think that they had had an argument before he walked out. That's the first thing I would think. Because, I wouldn't think anybody would lock the door if we were in a good mood. And I opened the door, what's going on here? I'd be worried that she might lock the door for some horrible reason, like she wanted to kill herself. But now he's acting like they'd had some kind of argument. But he's saying there wasn't any argument. So why is it? So the two things don't match. If they were all happy people before he left, then he shouldn't be thinking that she's trying to lock him out. Now, if you have one of those male-female arguments where, you get in this argument and the woman wants to talk and the guy's like, I'm going to go to the gym, man, which is not unusual, then she could be really pissed and want to lock the door and just screw him. But he's denying that they had an argument. So I don't know why he's denying that. So anyway, he's saying, I'm getting pissed. Hello, you better have an excuse. You better have an excuse. That's a controlling behavior. It's creepy. This is the fiance he's about to marry, who's having some emotional problems and under some stress. And he's being nasty to her. You better have an excuse. And then at the end, you have no idea. You have no idea what. So some people will say, well, if he had killed her, he would have pretended they were in good shape. He wouldn't have had the anger thing. He would have gone, honey, why aren't you opening the door? Honey, what's wrong? What's going on? That's a good reason. That's a good, reasonable thing to think that could be true. Why wouldn't he pretend? Because a lot of times that's what they do. It's like, oh, the last time we were together, everything was wonderful. She said, I love you when I left. So I agree with that. That I do think about that. It's like, if he's angry, why is he angry? Did she really lock the door to do something to herself? And he doesn't understand why she's locked, and he's pissed off because he thinks she's punishing him. That's reasonable to think. Or because sometimes we don't know how people are, if his go-to is anger, and he gets back and maybe he didn't know why the door was locked. Maybe he did flip and he's like pissed. And he's trying to get in the apartment to find her. And he's yelling stuff. He's texting and trying to act like he doesn't know what's going on. Maybe that's just his go-to. I don't know. So I will say, I don't know. Now, but the fact that he doesn't consider here that she might have harmed herself makes me wonder what kind of concerned fiance is he. Now, he also says this. So a medic responded to the 911 call. I'm going to get to the 911 in a minute because that's the biggest thing of this whole thing. A medic responded to the 911 call. He described the fiance as wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants. I thought it was in shorts, but okay. While heading to the apartment, the medic reported overhearing Ellen's fiance asking the property manager if Ellen was breathing and if she was okay, which makes no sense. After assessing Ellen in the apartment, the medic pronounced her dead at the scene. When the medic informed the fiance that Ellen was dead, he reportedly slid down the hallway wall. He already knew she was dead as a doornail. But anyway, now he slides down the wall and he rolls onto the floor saying, I can't believe it. We just sent out the save the date cards. That's your issue? We just sent out the wedding announcements. Not, I can't believe she's dead. I can't believe I've lost her. I can't believe she's dead. We sent out these. In other words, we were together. We're friends. We were in love. That sounds more like he is trying to say that he couldn't have done anything to her because we sent out the wedding invitations. One more thing here before I go to the 911. Okay. Let's go to the 911 calls. So I'm going to go to Peter Hyde on this because for some reason there's a whole lot of 911 stuff that's really abbreviated, and I don't understand why it's so secretive. But anyway, hold on a second. Let me find it. All right. Okay, here we go. All right, there we go. Here's Peter. All right, Peter Hyde again. I can't recommend enough that you check out what Peter has to say. Link below. Peter is, one of the finest professionals I've ever run into. Yeah. We miss him. That's all I can say. We miss him. Anyway, all right. Now, Sam Goldberbg, but who she just refers to as a fiance during the whole report, as if he doesn't have a name. I don't know why that is. Is protecting him or whatever. Okay. Anyway, this is the 911 call. Sam calls 911. Help. I just walked into my apartment. My fiance is on the floor with blood everywhere. Red flag, red flag, red flag. So many red flags in that one statement. I can't even. Now, he asked for help, but as Peter says, he doesn't ask for who the help's for, himself, whatever. I need all. It's about him. Peter points out. He says, I always. I need. Supposedly, somewhere else it says it was an ambulance. He needs an ambulance, but it's blurred. So. I've always pointed out that just usually indicates some kind of lie coming up, that they're trying to downplay something. Peter points out that it also takes away from, it's a time thing. In other words, it just happened. People say something, for example, I'm just going to run out, meaning it'll be real quick. It shortens time. So he says, I just arrived at the apartment. So what he's trying to say is, I wasn't there before. I just got here. Therefore, I have nothing to do with what's going on. I just. But then he says this, walked into my apartment. Dude, You didn't walk into your apartment. Supposedly, you broke the damn door down, although there's no evidence, and you never told them how you did that. There's no proof that you kicked the door. You never said you hit it with your shoulder. You've never said anything about how you got in the apartment. And that's in the police reports and everything. Nothing. Why not? The police should be interrogating him on that. I had a case where that's exactly what happened. The guy said he broke the door in, kicked the door in, and yet there was no damage to the door or the lock. I knew he was lying because it didn't happen. I don't have, how did he get in the apartment? Now he's saying I walked into, not broke into, not crashed through. I walked. Well, that's kind of like relaxed, isn't it? And then he says, into my apartment. Dude, your apartment. Well, I guess it's your apartment now that she's dead. But is that because you knew she was dead and now it's your apartment? I walked into my apartment, not our apartment. Why did you? I just walked into our apartment and my fiance was on the floor. No, you said my apartment, as if it wasn't hers. Either you're a controlling, possessive guy, or you knew she was dead and now it was your apartment. She's on the floor with blood everywhere. All right. Next. Peter has a lot more things. I'm not going to go through everything Peter said, so I want you to go listen to what he has to say. I'm just going to pick the things out that were, I think, were most interesting. He says, please, hurry, please. One of the things Peter talks about is ingratiation. When you got your fiance dying or dead on the floor, you don't usually have to say please, thank you, and all that stuff. You're like, get over here. She's on the floor. Help. She got send an ambulance. She's dying. You don't say please. Oh, please come. It would be really nice if you would. I'm not saying people don't ever say please when they're innocent, but this is just something to pay attention to. Here he says he urges them to hurry, but does not say why, does not ask for help to administer aid to the victim. Like what do I do? All right. They ask where the bleeding is from. He says, well, I don't know. I can't tell. Why can't he tell? Hasn't he looked? No, he's on the other side of the room. He's calling from the other side of the room. My fiance is on the floor and there's blood around her. You arrive home, your child is lying in a pool of blood. You arrive home, your wife, your husband, your loved one, your partner is on the floor in a pool of blood. Do you call 911 from across the room, or do you rush in and rush over to them to find out why they're bleeding, to see if you can save them, whether you can do anything right away, and then you call 911 when you don't know what the hell to do? But most normal people who haven't killed somebody and know they're dead, will run over to see what they can do. He's on the other side of the room going, oh, I just see a bunch of blood around her. Doesn't check to see if he can stop the blood. If she's bleeding from the head, he could put compression on it. Nothing. He doesn't do anything. He's doing it from across the room. Why doesn't he try to save her? Yeah, he doesn't do any of that. And then he says, no, sir, you have to calm down in order to get some help. I'll get you some help. And he says, I'm sorry. He's saying, again, he's apologizing because he wants to be in good with the people that are going to be, this is going to be recorded, you know what I mean? So let's see. He says, they ask more questions about what happened to her. I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I don't know. I can't see anything. You're looking at her, but you're not touching her. You're not near her. You don't. What the heck? This is the woman you're marrying. She could still be alive and you're not even over there. She doesn't, there's nothing broken. How do you know nothing's broken? I mean, she's lying there on the floor. She could have broken something. Maybe she broke her neck. Well, she didn't because maybe you know exactly what happened to her and therefore nothing is broken. That's a creepy statement. She's bleeding. Then he goes, Ellie. There. He's looking at her. All right. He also says, now I'm looking at her. Like he wasn't looking at her before, but now he's looking at her, All right. He wants the police to know that he may not be looking at her previously. This is impossible within his words. Okay. So the whole thing is very, very just weird. All right. So then he uses just again. Let's see. You can't see where the blood is coming from? I think her head. I think she hit her head. Like you would have any clue. because you weren't there, right? All right. It's then he said that, then the next person comes on and says, what's wrong? They're trying to get some more information from him. He says, I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up and the door was latched. My fiance was inside. She wasn't answering. So for about half an hour, no, that was about an hour. I decided to break it down and walk in again. And I see her now just on the floor, bloody. She's not responding. How is she not responding? Because apparently you haven't even gone and poked her yet. So now his thing is, when they ask what's wrong, he didn't say, my fiance is on the floor. I've gone over there and I see, she's bleeding out of cuts all over her body. I mean, you haven't done a damn thing. But what you have done is give your alibi. I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance was inside. She didn't answer. I had to break the door down. That's your alibi. You're more interested in your alibi than saving her life. Okay, is she breathing? I can't. Look at her chest. I need you to calm down. I need you to look at her chest. I don't think. Listen to me. Someone's on her way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back? Is her chest going up and down? I don't see her moving. Okay, do you know how to do CPR? I don't. Okay, I can tell you what to do until they get there. I want you to keep her flat. Oh, God. Wait a minute, where is it? Anything, Ellie, please. Okay. Then it says, rip off her shirt. Oh, God, she stabbed herself. Where? She fell on a knife. Sorry. Oh no, her knife is sticking out. Her what? There's a knife sticking out of her chest. Oh, she stabbed herself? I guess so. I don't know. Or she fell on it. I don't know. First of all, how do you not see the damn knife sticking out? This is a big knife. You look over at her body. I don't care if her head is slumped. How much could you not see that knife sticking out of her body? Because you were like across the room and until he tells you to do CPR, and you can't because there's a knife sticking straight up in your face. It's like, oh man, I guess the CPR is out. And then you say she fell on the knife. Nobody falls on a knife. Well, maybe 10 times, and if you're in this case, but she fell on the knife. Who falls on their knife? That's what he thought killed her. She fell on a knife. This completely ridiculous story. And then he says, her knife. Her knife? This is your apartment. It's a knife. But you say her knife. Why would you say her knife? And that's an interesting point, which bothers me. And I'll show you why it bothers me. And I forgot to pull this picture up. Oh, no, maybe I did. Oh, yeah. Okay. The wooden block that has fallen over, and he pulls a knife out of it. If he pulled the knife out, if she was trying to defend herself and was grabbing for a knife, and he grabbed the knife away from her or grabbed the knife out of it, maybe he doesn't ever cook, and he grabbed her knife and used it, so it's her knife. It's a weird thing to say that it's her knife, except also he's getting her to take responsibility for what happened to her. She fell on her knife. She stabbed herself with her knife. I had nothing to do with it. But I can't give her CPR because the knife is in her chest. All right. So she stabbed herself, I guess. So it looks like it's right in her heart. It's an interesting thing to say. That's very creepy. Most people won't even want to see that in their head. Pinch your arm and tell me if she responds to pain. Maybe that's what the stabby thing was. You still alive? Ellie, no, she's not. It's not her arm. Her hands are still warm. I don't know what it means. There's blood everywhere. And then he says, I know you can't. The knife is still inside her. How far? Can you see how far it went? It looks pretty deep. They say, don't touch anything. Yeah, we're the only ones here. And she ran in the door, you said, and latched it shut? No, I went downstairs to work out. And when I came back up, the door was latched. Like it wasn't, it wasn't like, it was like locked on the inside. I'm yelling. So here he was with the alibi again. And then there's no sign of a break-in, blah, blah, blah. There was this one other point where supposedly he actually chuckles like I guess he can't do the CPR. I can't remember where it was, but he chuckles at one point. Go check out Peterson on that. Why does Lindsay Simon not talk about the text messages that don't seem right? Why doesn't she talk about the entire hour it took him to get into the apartment? Why is he more concerned about getting permission to break into an apartment while his loved one may be dying if it costs him $100 or something, because he's not a poor dude? Why is she not talking about that? Why is she not talking about this creepy 911 call, which points toward guilt rather than innocence? Why is she talking about the fact she would have more likely taken one of those 3 medicines or all 3 together and taken herself out that way than stabbing herself more than 20 times with a knife, which is so unique that she even says it's an aberration? But she doesn't care about anything that might point the finger at him being involved. She doesn't want to talk about anything that would make this not a suicide. So she's going to go with strictly, she could have stabbed herself. And that's the end of it. She's ignored everybody, every other medical examiner, every other equivocal death analysis. She's ignored everybody else who has any kind of logical thing to say about this. She doesn't address the logical things they say. So, it's one thing to disagree with them, but if you're going to disagree with them, explain why what they're saying is not right. So this to me is an egregious equivocal death analysis. Absolutely appalling. I can't fathom how this could be presented as something that is professional, that is unbiased. It's astonishing, really. And I was really shocked when I read it, because even if you think she did kill herself, you should still think, even if you lean that direction, there is too much other stuff that would make this at least undetermined. And if you can't even come up undetermined, I think you're a shill for somebody. I don't know that you're a shill for somebody, but I think you're shilling for somebody. Maybe it's just to keep your job. I don't know. But I'm highly unimpressed. And I feel very sad that you couldn't do the job the way you should have done the job. And I don't know what the family's going to do from this point on, because this is one of the few cases where I think there is a question whether she actually killed herself, because there's enough evidence, and circumstantially, and just the way things actually work in real life don't point to her killing herself. So I would put it undetermined. I can't prove it's homicide. I would put it as undetermined, and the police need to do a more thorough job. And of course, we know that from the beginning, the police did a piss poor job. Quite frankly, they did. And didn't protect the crime scene, allowed his family to get in there and get a hold of stuff, didn't interrogate him. I mean, they didn't do a good job. That this case will ever come to wherever, if she was murdered, will this ever see justice in a court of law? Probably not. But at least, if nothing else, it should be undetermined. And there should be hope that maybe someday the family will get a proper answer. But this isn't that day. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Again, new to the channel, like and subscribe. And I don't know if I'm going to have any more to say about this case, but yeah, it's a fascinating one, sad, and one of the rare cases where I actually think maybe, just maybe, this really was not a suicide. Thank you for being here.